The UFC fan rebellion is complete, and the fans won. That's right, the UFC is no longer procrastinating on this Jon Jones situation because Dana White just announced that Jones is officially retired and Tom Aspinall is officially the heavyweight champion, the undisputed heavyweight champion, even though in the eyes of all MMA fans he was already undisputed. It is on paper now, like Anthony Smith. And I'm going to let Dana White announce it here. Let's just see what Dana has to say.
You said the timeline for Jones, 2 weeks to decide what to do with the title, whether it takes the fight or you're going to strip him. What do you think is more important, to keep the belt there so he can uphold his legacy, or we move the heavyweight division, take the title away from him?
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Thank you very much.
So you heard it. Jon Jones called Dana White to tell him that he was done. It may sound like it was Jones who took it upon himself to do it, but ultimately it was us, and I'll tell you why. Dana White recently said that he was going to figure it out in the next couple of weeks. He said this in an interview a couple of days ago. He said, "We'll have this figured out in a couple of weeks." From that moment on, Dana White was probably going to try to communicate with Jon Jones and say, hey, man, the fans are putting a lot of pressure on us. Let's get this thing going. We were going to find out anyway, despite whether or not Jones called him yesterday or Dana White called Jon in 2 days or whatever. They were going to make a decision within the time frame of when that interview came out to July. But the point that I want to make is I don't think Dana White would have gotten to that point to where he would be telling reporters, we're going to make this decision within the next couple of weeks, if it weren't for the fans. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of MMA fans that were rioting in the comment sections of UFC pages, UFC Instagram, UFC YouTube, even on ESPN MMA. ESPN MMA didn't hurt anyone, even though they're kind of related to the UFC. I saw some comments on Full Violence YouTube posts saying, don't care, strip Jon Jones. People were rebelling. Things were getting out of hand. Again, they were crossing over to other pages that had nothing to do with it, but we put the pressure on the UFC. The fans told the UFC, we're not going to wait around any longer. Hurry this the fuck up. Can we figure this out? Are we going to get the fight or not? We all knew that it was probably not going to happen, but we just wanted it to be over. We wanted to move on with the heavyweight division. And ultimately, this is a lesson to the UFC to listen to the fans. And not only that, think about Dana White, Hunter Campbell, and all of the guys in the UFC brass. The guys that are matchmakers, the people that are running the show. This is a wake-up call because they realize that they fumbled this one. And if you were watching Dana White interviews throughout the past couple of years, despite Jon Jones clearly wanting nothing to do with Tom Aspinall, Dana White and his cronies had this delusional idea that, no, it'll work. Jon Jones Jon Jones doesn't duck anyone. I mean, it's been a while since Dana White has gone on one of those rants, but how many rants have you heard Dana White where he's saying Jones isn't scared of anyone and he's snapping back at reporters? And even last year, because this has been going on for 2 years now, Dana White, after Islam Makhachev submitted Dustin Poirier, spent the entire post-fight press conference whining about how this reporter had the nerve to question Jon Jones's fighting spirit, right? Despite the fact that Jones didn't want to fight Aspinall. But it's a wake-up call to the UFC because this is yet another missed opportunity. And I think that it's even worse in this case scenario because they let this go on for so long. They just let it happen and they made themselves look weak. But ultimately, it was on Jon Jones. I mean, the UFC called his bluff. They gave him the fuck you money that he wanted, and he still didn't want that fight. So it just goes to show that he didn't want anything to do with Tom Aspinall. He was afraid of losing a fight. And it goes to show that this is another fight, mega fight, I should say. This is another dream matchup that the UFC has promised us, but has fallen through. I mean, we've had a bunch of these now. We had Daniel Cormier, Brock Lesnar. The UFC for a year was telling fans, that's the one that we're trying to make. We're going to do that. It never happened. Makhachev versus Topuria. I pushed harder for that fight than anyone else. And we're not getting that fight. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited for Makhachev and JDM. And I'm excited for Topuria versus Oliveira. But Makhachev versus Topuria is a mega fight. I know we're all hardcore fans, and you're probably just as excited for Makhachev versus JDM. But when it comes to a huge fight feel, you'll only get that with Makhachev and Topuria. Not Topuria and Oliveira. Not Makhachev and JDM. I know Oliveira and Topuria is a big fight, but it's not a mega fight. That fight is not going to happen. Okay, I know Makhachev has said that if he wins against JDM, he's still interested in moving back down to fight Topuria, but I just feel like it's never going to happen. It's a cursed fight. Tony and Khabib, I know that it wasn't for a lack of trying. The UFC tried to put that together, but it just kept falling through. But again, it's another fight that they weren't able to deliver on. Not because it's their fault, but it's like, dude, how many mega fights are the fans going to ask for that you're not going to actually give us? And they were so confident. They were so, nonchalant, confident. Yeah, okay, well, yes, of course we're going to make the fight. Jones doesn't duck anyone. They had this delusion about them, right? Where they were so naive. I mean, it was clear to all of us fans that Jones was probably not going to fight Aspinall, but they maintained this, smile on their faces, this don't worry about it mentality. It's going to happen, man. We always stick to our guns. We always come through with our promises, right? And it never happened. And the UFC understands that it's time to stop messing around, especially now that they've got this new deal on the horizon. They've got to pull through with big fights, okay? And a lot of people were saying that this Jon Jones fight and Tom Aspinall fight, maybe the UFC was saving it for their new deal, and maybe that was part of the bargain on the UFC's end. It's like, hey man, we're gonna have this mega fight. Jones, he's like the last draw in our company. We've got stars, but they're from a part of the world where pay-per-views aren't really being sold. Jones is American. He's gonna be a draw in the pay-per-view market. This is something that we have, man. You may want this. And they just lost that. So now the UFC is in a much worse place when it comes to their ability to get a great deal. And in order to get a better deal, they're going to have to put up some better cards. They're going to have to end the year strong, and they better end the year strong. It's not only that we've been deprived from these mega fights, we've not been getting great quality products, and it's time that the UFC listens to the fans. Okay, now on one hand, I just got done talking about how this is going to sting the UFC, and it's not good when it comes to business because they just lost a huge fight. But when it comes to the fan base, we just won. We got the UFC to cut this saga to a halt, to end it, to stop the nonsense. And even though it's not great for the UFC when it comes to business, it's like, dude, we understood we were never going to get it. It doesn't feel like I just lost Jones versus Aspinall. Does anyone honestly feel upset that, no, we're not going to get the fight? Come on, you have to be a fucking idiot to believe that fight was happening. I know there were still some people that were clinging on, but that shit wasn't happening. I knew that a year and a half ago. So I'm looking at this whole situation as if it's just a positive. It shows the UFC that they should listen to the fans, and they were dumb not to. That they were honestly stupid to believe that Jones would actually take the fight, and because they believed that, they let it go on for 2 fucking years. And it also goes to show that since they're not going to have that to bargain with, they're going to be forced to put up really good pay-per-view cards, and they're going to be forced to actually give us mega fights. Because if they ever even think about a mega fight, they're not even going to talk about it unless they know, okay, this is next. They're not going to do the whole, if this guy wins and if this guy wins, that's next. They'll just fucking make the fight to begin with, okay? So, yeah, I hope that this means that any big super fight you could even think of, that's probably going to happen, all right? I mean, there were fans that were saying, no, I'm done with the double champ fights. I'm done with the double champ fights. No, man, I want double champ fights as long as they're actually hype. If it's Leon Edwards trying to fight Dricus du Plessis, of course, that's the kind of double champ fight that I don't really want. But if it's Topuria, who's knocking people's lights out, undefeated, trash talker, millions of followers, if it's that guy that wants to move up, we have to encourage it, and the UFC better make it happen. They have to facilitate it. So I'm happy that we're finally done with this. I'm happy for Tom Aspinall. He is a champion. He was the uncrowned champ, but now it's official. And as far as his career is concerned, that does a lot for him because I mean, just because he's officially the champ on paper, he's going to get a lot of endorsement deals, and that'll be good for sponsorships and whatnot. So Tom Aspinall, he will be able to carry that belt around, even the belt that he won that was an interim belt. But, you know, the whole world will now understand that he is the undisputed champ. There will still be a couple of casuals out there that think that Tom Aspinall's not the real champ because he didn't beat Jon Jones. But, like, who cares? All right. It does kind of suck that the heavyweight division is so shallow. That kind of sucks, but it's fine. Tom Aspinall will catch a couple of bodies and will put together a great highlight reel. The last thing I need to say is that I hope the UFC really promotes Tom. They were clearly not promoting Tom because they wanted to promote Jon as the champion, because the UFC felt like as long as we have Jones around, that's big for us, and we need to promote him because we need to go out there and say that we have the best, baddest heavyweight on the planet. It's Jones, Bones, Jones, right? But, like, they weren't promoting Tom Aspinall. I mean, you could beg Dana White to promote Tom Aspinall, and he wouldn't. I think it's important that they really get behind him because he has everything that you could possibly want. He's relatable. Everyone loves him, right? He's got a great personality, especially when it comes to heavyweights. Most heavyweights are mutes, or they barely know how to talk, or they just don't talk. Tom Aspinall makes content on YouTube, vlogs. He loves doing interviews, right? He has a personality that, again, you can get behind, and the fight style, KO artist, right? He's from the UK. There's something about a UK heavyweight champion that's always a big deal. And not only is he a KO artist, but he can twist people into a pretzel on the ground. So you really have a once-in-a-lifetime talent with Tom Aspinall. They need to market this guy as the most dangerous man in human history. Dana White needs to learn from his mistake. He needs to understand how foolish he was about this whole situation, and he needs to make it up to not only Tom, but to the fans and to the sport to actually do what he needs to do as a promoter. He needs to get back to promoting, and he needs to promote Tom. Because it's one thing that he strips Jones and Tom is the undisputed champ, but we go on and move forward like nothing ever happened, and it's like Dana White still would rather promote Power Slap over the UFC. It's another thing if they move forward and they're like, all right, this lit a fire under us. We're going to get back to our old ways because we lost this big fight that we all thought we were going to get, but we don't have it anymore. So we need to actually listen to the fans a little bit and do what we need to do as a promotion. So I hope that they actually learn from this and get better. So let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.